Okay, guys. I mean, you are familiar with soundtrack work, aren't you? The committee? Nice. More? Far out stuff. Zabriskie Point. That was. Woo. You know what I mean? But yeah, listen to me. What about this? There's this French chick, and she's going on this expedition in New Guinea to find the feathers of a rare bird. But during this expedition, she finds this tribe and they tell her of a kind of lost paradise that is in a valley obscured by clouds. And, well, they are all speaking French anyway, and it's going to be a very strange, far out journey of self discovery. Yeah, whatever. Nobody understands those French filmmakers, do they? But hey, your audience, all those potheads, excuse me, and the intellectual hippie students, they are gonna love it. So, what do you say, guys? No, we're not doing artsy film soundtracks anymore. We're actually recording our next album, and it's gonna be a masterpiece. Actually, Pink Floyd said yes back in 1971, 72, and provided the music for this rather obscure, no pun intended, French artsy hippie movie. It was to be the last soundtrack work, not counting, of course, the soundtrack to their own movie, The Wall. And this album also has been a little bit obscured by clouds, pun intended this time. Um, for many fans, it's simply a kind of side project, a stopgap before the big Dark Side of the Moon masterpiece Rock for the Ages album. An album filled with filler, lesser material, material that sometimes doesn't really sound like Pink Floyd, or maybe they had a lot of songs left that didn't really fit on any of their proper albums. Whichever way you'd like to describe it, Obscured by Clouds definitely is an album to revive my Under the Radar series. And if you're now wondering where my usual little slideshow is with photographs and a bit of a stiff description of the band biography, look no further than my old video about Pink Floyd's Animals, where I did a little band biography, a very quick band biography up to the year 1977. We are now, however, in the year 1972, and Pink Floyd had just finished or released their album Metal, the first album that sort of after their debut album, still with Syd Barrett, gained them a bit of, a wider audience outside avant-garde weirdos and the underground scene in swinging and LSD taking London. But for Obscured by Clouds, or the actual title of the movie was La Vallée, The Valley, the band came up with a collection of not really connected songs that sometimes actually sound like a blueprint for what was to become The Dark Side of the Moon, and sometimes sounds unlike anything else you will find on any other Pink Floyd album. Now, the film La Vallée seems to be quite an artsy and strange affair, a movie that could only have seen the light of day in the late 60s, early 70s. I will freely confess that I have never watched this movie. I've only looked at trailers. However, I think to enjoy this album, you actually don't really need to know this film. And that, I think, is a good sign or a good characteristic for a good soundtrack. It should also work independently of the movie that it was made for. The album was recorded very quickly in 2 sessions in France. Pink Floyd were in the middle of 2 tours, more or less. And yeah, they hammered out 10 songs, 10 tracks for this movie in 2 sessions. I guess they already had some old song ideas lying about somewhere. The cover artwork is as obscure as the film and maybe also this album, but it's actually, if you look very, very closely, without getting hallucinations, it's a still from the film, but very distorted. And the cover artwork, as always with the Pink Floyd albums, or at least probably 90% of the Pink Floyd albums, maybe all Pink Floyd albums, the cover artwork design again was made by the famous Hipgnosis company. The self-produced album is certainly the shortest Pink Floyd album of them all. There are 10 tracks, but a number of them are really very short, very concise. The shortest Pink Floyd songs you will ever find, maybe outside some of the short songs on their debut album. Due to the little time there was and the intense studio sessions, this album is quite collaborative, with the various band members sharing songwriting credits. And the album begins with the title track, possibly also the main theme of the movie, Obscured by Clouds. It's an instrumental that plods along in an almost foreboding way. Also has got a heavy, dark synthesizer sound. But I like this track a lot, and the atmosphere that it creates. It rather sounds like it's maybe a theme or incidental music for a science fiction movie, not an experimental, artsy, hippie movie. And it's pretty much Pink Floyd doing a futuristic jam, but as mentioned, all the tracks are very short. So I guess, or I could imagine that the recording was a lot longer and maybe they were indeed jamming on this rather monotonous but quite intriguing theme. The opening track is, I think, only about 3 minutes long on the album. Yeah, interesting way to start this album. Also, the next one, When You're In, is credited to the whole band, and it sounds like a snippet from an instrumental jam they did in the studio. It's only about 2.5 minutes long. It continues the rather heavy-handed plodding tempo and atmosphere of the opening track, but Rick Wright throws in some cool 70s Hammond organ sounds. Yeah, it's very much an instrumental 70s rock track. Then we get to the first proper song on the album, Burning Bridges, an interesting collaboration between Rick Wright, who did the music, and Roger Waters, who did the very, in this case, indeed obscure lyrics. I have no idea what this song actually is about. It sounds quite tender and romantic in a way. So it could be about a moment of falling in love. I've seen other interpretations saying that it's about a woman cheating on her lover. Whatever the real meaning may be, this is a lost or a forgotten classic in the Pink Floyd catalog, in my opinion. Maybe the last real psychedelic song. It's very mellow, tranquil, very slow, but in a very pleasant way. It's like, I don't know, looking at clouds while being under the influence, or maybe floating down a river while being under the influence of certain substances. There's just a gorgeous chord progression going through the song, and the melody meanders through different modulations. Great songwriting by Richard Wright and Roger Waters. If hard pressed, this is one of my very favorite Pink Floyd songs, which, yeah, it's quite funny that this is one of their lesser known songs from a rather lesser known album. If you've never heard Burning Bridges and you are a fan of, yeah, the late 60s, early 70s Pink Floyd, before they went stadium and did their rather dark and very serious, stern concept albums, you really need to check out this track.
Magic vision stirring, kindled by and burning, flames rise in her eyes.
I've already announced that a couple of tracks on this album sound unlike anything else in the Pink Floyd catalog, and the next song is such an example, at least to my ears. The Gold It's in the band also throws a couple of really odd titles at us. Maybe those titles or, unfinished sentences refer to scenes from the movie, though sometimes I have the feeling Pink Floyd weren't very interested in the plot of the movie and just, hammered out a bunch of songs that came to their minds. Anyway, The Gold It's in the is no nonsense, straightforward 1970s rock and roll. Pink Floyd fans might even say that this is as conventionally 70s rock as Floyd ever sounded, and therefore probably that's not what Pink Floyd fans like about Pink Floyd, or that's not what they want to hear from Pink Floyd. But I found listening to this track, coming across this track, extremely refreshing. David Gilmour sings on this song, which seems to be about the journey being a purpose in itself. So everybody is looking for something. Let's go and find out what's behind the hills. But the actual purpose of a journey is the journey and not necessarily the final destination. It's a nice little rocker, also with a more aggressive 70s hard rock guitar solo from David Gilmour. Almost doesn't really sound like the typical David Gilmour guitar sound. So yeah, if you are looking for something very different by Pink Floyd, this track is a good address to go to.
You can get your hands on whatever we find, 'cause I'm only coming along for the ride. When you go your way, I don't mind. I don't care if we get there on time.
The band does an almost 180 degrees turn. What's the Deal is an acoustic ballad, almost a kind of soft rock, pop rock song And that's not meant in a negative way. This is the most beautiful track on the whole album. Very melodic, very tuneful. Again, very mellow, laid back. And to me, this one almost sounds like it was left over by George Harrison from his All Things Must Pass sessions. This is a very immediate and quite catchy song by Pink Floyd. David Gilmour apparently enjoys performing this one. To this day, at least as far as I know, he has resurrected the song occasionally for solo live shows. And yeah, it's a really beautiful tune.
Let me in from the cold, turn my land into gold, 'cause there's a chill wind blowing in my soul, and I think I'm growing old.
Gilmour does a bit of slide guitar or bottleneck playing, and Rick Wright turns in a nice little piano solo, Mudman, which sounds like maybe the title to theme song for, mud catching or something like that. But actually, it's again a very hypnotic, mellow, slow instrumental, and it's a variation on Burning Bridges. So we get a kind of reprise here, and this is where also the last listener will notice that, okay, this is obviously a kind of soundtrack album and not really a proper studio album with, simply different individual songs. I like this one as well. It's a nice atmospheric little instrumental. It's dominated by Rick Wright's organ sound, and you get another great guitar solo from David Gilmour. Childhood's End, this is a song written by David Gilmour alone, one of the rare instances where he also wrote the lyrics to a Pink Floyd song. Title more or less says it all. It's about the harsh realities of growing up, but there also seems to be a general anti-war message in the lyrics. In my opinion, the song starts with a very slow fade in where we hear Rick Wright's keyboards again, or maybe a mellotron. It's a really slow dawn of a song. And then Floyd get into one of their typical, rather sluggish, mid-tempo grooves. The song almost sounds like a blueprint for things they later on did on The Wall. It's a very cool David Gilmour song, kind of a laid-back rock song by Pink Floyd. Childhood's End is followed by the seemingly lightweight Free Fall, sung by Roger Waters, this time his only vocal performance on the album. And for maybe the first minute and 40 seconds, you could almost accuse Pink Floyd of having tried to write a very throwawayish bubblegum song. It has a very simple stomping rhythm and just, strumming of an acoustic guitar until Gilmour comes in or almost crashes in with really heavy guitar solo, and he does so several times throughout the song. And again, we get that droning synthesizer tone from Rick Wright that already opened the entire album. So there also in the music, there is a thematic connection between the songs in a very loose way. In the lyrics, Waters deals with death, the end of life, and how unglamorous death can be. He sings of shuffling in the sick room. There is also a reference, probably a reference to his father having died in the Second World War, a theme that would reoccur in Waters's lyrics more and more throughout the career of Pink Floyd. In Free Fall, his lyricism still is very much tongue-in-cheek, and he approaches his subject or his songwriting with a rather maybe sarcastic but still humorous style, whereas on the later albums, Waters, which is well known, Waters' lyrics became more and more cynical and bitter and really stern in a way. The song is an odd choice for a single, but it was chosen as a single of Obscured by Clouds. I think Burning Bridges or What's the Deal would have been far better choices as singles, and I don't think Free Fall charted anywhere, at least not in a really serious manner.
Don't mind how you go, I can tell you, 'cause I know you may find it hard to get off.
And then there is Stay, composed and sung by Rick Wright with lyrics from Roger Waters, a tender, rather melancholic piano ballad about a one-night stand and the longing for not being alone. Another quite pleasant, very straightforward track. Maybe not the strongest song of all times, but I'm a bit of a fan of those Rick Wright songs from the early Pink Floyd albums. Yes, and to remind us that we were actually listening to a Pink Floyd album, the band closes this album with the longest track, another instrumental, which is called Absolutely Curtains. So it's probably the end credits to the movie. This is just a droning, very slowly floating keyboard synthesizer instrumental. Certainly the most experimental song on the album, and I see this one as the middle piece or the bridge from Set the Controls to the Heart of the Sun to Shine On You Crazy Diamond. The last 2 minutes of this track actually consist of field recordings of tribal chants. I think it's a tribe that also appears in the movie from New Guinea. Definitely one of those early Pink Floyd experiments that is more about sound and atmosphere than about actually creating a concise song. Obscured by Clouds, believe it or not, briefly made it to number 1 in France, and at least a more than respectable number 6 in the UK. It also fared quite well in Denmark and the Netherlands, I think. But yeah, of course, it wasn't a huge seller, and ever since it's also been a bit down-talked by the band members themselves. Although Nick Mason has at least once stated in an interview that he quite enjoys this album. But yeah, what do drummers know about music? I mean, look at me. I also quite like this album. It would be, of course, exaggerated to say that Obscured by Clouds is a kind of forgotten masterpiece, or that it's actually better than Dark Side of the Moon or Metal. Maybe it's also a bit unfair that this album is sandwiched in between Metal and Dark Side of the Moon. And yeah, Pink Floyd themselves were very much focused on the dark side of the moon. I think they sensed or felt or already knew that they had something big on their hands with that album. So Obscured by Clouds really was a bit of a stopgap for them to, I don't know, experiment a little bit or have fun in the studio. And so it's not surprising that this album is, in the truest sense of the word, a mixed bag, but a very enjoyable mixed bag. And the word that comes to my mind the most when thinking of this album and listening to this album is the word charming. It's actually a quite charming album without too many high ambitions from the band. They just sat down, maybe watched a rough cut of the movie, and sat down and came up with some quite nice songs and some also not too uninteresting instrumentals. I mean, very often, jamming in the studio or doing instrumental music for a movie where also as a band, that the music will rather be playing in the background. This can lead to, very boring, long jam tracks that actually don't go anywhere. I think the band did well in deciding that they only put on very short versions of those instrumentals. Actually, the actual songs are longer than the instrumental tracks on this album, with the exception of Absolutely Curtains. And I like this album, as I've said before, because it shows a bit of a different side to Pink Floyd as a band and also to Pink Floyd's songwriting on this album. And it's a very nice addition to your Pink Floyd collection. If you're a fan of Pink Floyd, you will be aware of this album anyways. If you have only heard the big classics by Pink Floyd, then this is, as mentioned, a quite charming album in their discography. It is underrated to some extent, but then maybe it means to be underrated because it was simply this little side project for the band. But it should definitely not remain under the radar. Thanks for watching, and until the next obscure choice here on Murdoch's Music Minute.